Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legend of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and today we're going to talk about rotation. And I'm going to make a case for why I believe that rotation is a good thing and would help in Legends of Runeterra. And I know that some of you out there don't like the idea of rotation. You don't think it's a good idea. I was actually a bit surprised by that. I didn't know that that was a view that other people held. But even if it is unpopular, you know, with some people or whatever, there is a reason that pretty much every card game does have rotation, and I'm going to talk about today, specifically in Runeterra, some of the problems that Runeterra might have if rotation doesn't come about. So let's just start off again very quickly by talking about what is rotation. Basically, rotation is that, you know, you have certain cards that have existed since, you know, a long time ago. Cards like, let's say, Teemo or Elise, you know, came out in the first set, and eventually, you know, you just get so many cards that you end up with so many cards that, like, you know, a lot of cards aren't playable or whatever. You eventually rotate those cards out, and, you know, they either go, you know, either they can't be played or they get to be played in like a specific other format, you know. So you might create like a historic mode, right, where you can play all the cards, but it's not a part of your kind of standard, like, these are the cards that we're currently, you know, focusing on the most. You know, they go into like an older format that you can play and go back to if you really want to. That's generally what rotation is, and, you know, it happens every, you know, year, 2 years, something like that, right? So, why do I think that rotation in Legends of Runeterra would be a good thing? Well, here's the deal. And I understand that devs want to get every champion into the game, and they want to have, you know, all the champions in the game at the same point. That's great, and you know, that does pose its own questions of what happens when we get there, which will be an interesting point, you know, when we do get there in this game, I suppose. But we'll, you know, we don't need to worry about that right now. You know, there's plenty of time left to decide what will happen at that point. But I would argue that right now, the amount of champions and cards in the game is at a good amount. That right now, there is around enough champions and enough cards in the game to create a bunch of interesting, unique, different decks. And particularly once, like, the Bandle City expansion is fully out as well, you know, you add in, like, you know, like 6 to 8 champions as well, and all those cards that will come with those little expansions, that then, you know, I think that we'll be at what I would call a max capacity of cards. And what do I mean by a max capacity of cards? Well, I basically mean that once we're at that point, I think anything bigger than that, adding on an extra big expansion to that at that point, I think would give the devs an almost impossible task to be able to correctly balance things and be able to make significant changes to enough cards to make things interesting and fresh. That is my personal belief, and the way I'm going to express this to you is, let's go through these champions right now. We'll go through all of them, and we're going to pick out the champions that I believe are only played by people who really either love the champion or love the deck that champion goes in, and it doesn't really see much place elsewhere. So let's go through these champions now, and there'll be some that, you know, we can put on the fence or whatever, but let's go through. Fizz, I would put on that list. You know, he's maybe a bit of a maybe at the moment, you know, because he's had some cards recently come out, but I would put him, like, on the right side of this. I think, you know, in 3 months' time, people won't be playing Fizz. Teemo, I'll give you. Zoe, I'll give you. Action, I'll give you. So we're up to 1 out of 4 so far. Diana, definitely, I think, is on the list. Elise is a maybe, but I probably would put her on the list. You don't see much Elise these days. Lucian, again, is a bit on the fence, but again, I would give it to. Zillion, I'll say no for now. Aphelios, definitely. Azir is close, but I'll say no just about. Caitlyn, no. Draven, no. Ezreal, no. Fiora, yes, I would say. Aurelia, yes, I would say. We're up to 7. Callista, 8. Katarina, 9. LeBlanc, I'll say no. I'll be lenient. We're up to 9. Lysandra, I'll say no. Lulu, I'll say no. Misfortune, no. Nami, no. Rek'Sai, honestly, I haven't seen that many lurk decks around, so I'll say yes, 10. Riven, 11. Soraka, 12. Tristana, 13. Zed, I'll give. Ziggs, I'll give. Ashe, probably on the fence. What are we up to? 13. I'll say no for Ashe, but Braum, definitely 14. Echo 15, Jinx even maybe, but I'll say no. Leona 17, Maokai 18, Nocturne what to 19, 20? Up to 19? I can't even remember. But let's call Nocturne 19. I'm sure that you can just go back and be like, Chris, you're an idiot. But it's kind of hard to do in the moment. But anyway, Poppy, no, but Pike probably like 20, Renekton 21, Shen maybe, Shyvana probably like 22. Sivir, no, 23 on Tom Kench. Tarek, yes, 24. Twisted Fate, probably not. Veigar, no. Victor, 25. Xerath, we'll give them Yasuo, 26. Gangplank, no. Garen, definitely 27. Like, you're getting the point, right? That if we go through again, like, you could say yes to Heimerdinger, Karma, maybe, yes to Kindred, no to Lee Sin, yes to Quinn, no to Senna, no to Swain, no to Talia. Thresh on the borderline. Trundle probably is a yes at this point. Vi, maybe. Viego even a maybe. Vlad definitely yes. Anivia definitely yes. Darius probably a yes. Hecarim a yes. Jarvan yes. Lux yes. Nasus on the borderline. Sejuani is fine. Malphite yes. Nautilus probably a yes. Sion obviously is new. Trinity yes. Asol yes. So we're basically, I would say, at least looking about half the champions in the game. At this point, see very, very limited play. It's not to say that they're all bad designs and that you know, some of these cards could never come back into the meta. Of course, that's not the case. They could introduce, you know, new cards that make certain champions much better. You know, they could introduce a bunch of spider cards that make Elise a lot better, for instance. So it's not that they can't release new cards to make these champions better, but I'm just talking about at the current moment in time, you've got about already half the champions that aren't seeing that much play, if any play really at all. And that's a problem. You know, and what are we going to do? Add like double the amount of champions that are already in the game so that you end up with, what, 3/4 potentially of the champions that don't see any play? You know, that's the stage we're going to get to in this game. You know, if not even worse, we might end up with about 1/5 of the champions seeing play at all. You know, there will be certain champions at that point that literally see zero play. And the thing is, there'll be so many champions at that point that it just becomes an impossible task to try and, you know, update them all and balance them all to make them good. So that's my first reason of why, to me, it seems like an impossible task to keep adding new champions. And of course, League of Legends will keep adding new champions as well, which just increases the amount of champions by the time we get to the end that Legends of Runeterra has to have if we're going to have all the champions in the game at the same time. You know, that's going to be a lot and a lot and a lot and a lot of work. But secondly, and the second point is that combos of these cards will just become ridiculous. And, you know, we'll get to the point, we're already getting to the point, you know, where we're seeing, as I mentioned yesterday, you know, a bit of power creep in the game. And we're going to get to the point where some of these champions just become completely unplayable, but certain combos just become completely overpowered. For instance, no one saw, you know, Poppy Ziggs being a deck. I'm sure the devs didn't test for Poppy Ziggs burn aggro being a thing. Of course they probably didn't, right? Why would they? But that's like one of the best decks in the meta at this current moment. But they have like no synergies between each other, but they're just a bunch of good cards. And that is the problem that you eventually will lead into, is that you're just going to get a lot of these decks that just slam in all of the best cards as much as they can and don't have any synergy really with each other. And the whole point, in my opinion, one of the best things about Legends of Runeterra is that, you know, by building around these champion cards, you know, you get synergistic kind of cool looking decks, you know, like Nightfall, for instance, is, you know, meant to be a synergistic deck. Like, you know, and that was one of the big talking points, was how can I get these two champions to synergize together? How can I make them synergize together? What cards, you know, connect these two champions together? That was kind of one of the big things. What cards bring Ziggs and Poppy together? I mean, maybe Bandle City Mare, because it discounts them both, but literally that's about it. You know, that is literally, I think, the only synergy between them, is that one is, you know, essentially just a good 3-drop, and one is a really good 4-drop, and they, you know, both have a nice aggro kind of feel to them, and that's it. You know, like, there isn't really much synergy between them at all, you know, and they weren't meant to be played together. I'm sure the devs are very happy for Ziggs to be played with Talia, or Malphite, or any other landmark champion, you know, Xerath, of course. Or Poppy? what's going on? But this will just continue, right? This is just the start. This will only go on. This is only going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And so the balance task of the devs, and we've already seen this because what used to happen in the open beta when there was less cards, we can even go on it, go on Foundations and look at the amount of cards that were in the game. It was very easy to balance, this many cards, this many champions when there's only what? 8, 12, 16, 20, 24 champions in the game. It becomes very easy to balance these cards because don't have, and you can get more extreme with your balance changes as well. For instance, they nerfed Hecarim heavily. They made him -1/1 in stats and made his Spectral Riders only 2/2s instead of 3/2s. Like, that was a massive nerf to Hecarim, which was probably deserved at the time. But those were the kind of changes that they could get away with, and I think what happened was they got used to making these kind of changes because there weren't that many cards in the game, and they made that kind of change to Lee Sin. They thought, oh, we can still go big with these changes. Made Lee Sin 4 mana from 6 mana, broke the game, and, at that point they probably realized, oh, now there's too many cards to make these, big wholesale universal changes. We don't really have to worry about it. We can just change it in a week. Those kind of things. That was no longer the case. And I think that they got a bit scared. And so it made the balance patches worse. And we've seen basically since, sort of mid-Targon, that the balance patches began to slow. And then eventually the community would get angry. And then eventually there'd be uproar. And they'd, give us a big balance patch. And then nothing had happened for a while. And then we'd get angry again. And then give us a big balance patch, and then now again there's been nothing for a while, and then we're all expecting a big balance patch, etc. And all of that, and they're having to change this balance cadence, and obviously we'll see what it is, I guess, but they're having to change it because there's already becoming too many cards, and it's becoming too difficult for them to balance all of the cards. Now, those of you who weren't around for the early days on Rising Tides, I cannot explain to you how good it was to play the game, knowing that even if there was a bad meta, it was lasting for 2 weeks. And that was it. And if anything was too problematic, that was it. 2 weeks. Could you survive 2 weeks? And for that meta to settle anyway, it would normally take a week. So really, it was only really a week that you had to suffer an Azir Aurelia that would be around for a week. And then you could get on with your life and things would be better again. And then you could play whatever you wanted again. But obviously, that isn't going to happen right now. And I don't think it ever will happen again because the amount of cards that we are getting is just so much. And it is an impossible task for a team that I believe is probably as small as, the Runeterra team is. Remember, this is a bit of a passion project. This isn't like Riot's #1 focus, of course. It's just gonna be too much for them. And so I do think that overall, that we do need rotation because it fixed so many of these problems. All of these problems of having too many cards and having combos that you haven't really thought about yet and whatever would all be gone. All those problems go very easily with rotation, and you don't have to completely get rid of the cards. They can just go into an old historic format, and then once you've done that, of course, you get to reimagine characters potentially as well. Garen has never really seen much play, but potentially with, newer design, now that they understand the game a bit better and what they need to do, maybe they could make a Garen version that, would make elites good or something like that, There would be more options there, more potential to experiment and find something within a character that potentially isn't there right now, and would give them more options. And maybe, one day they will end up with rotation, as I say, once all the characters maybe are in the game. Maybe that's the path we are heading down. But with that said, thank you so much for watching. I'd really like to know what other people think about this, because I know that there's a lot of you out there who don't like rotation, but I do think the rotation would solve, quite a few of the key issues, I think, that are coming up with this game, and issues that I can see happening again and again and again in the future could easily be solved by just having rotation. But let's see what happens. I'd love to know what you think. With that said, thank you so much for watching, and have a really nice day.